This presentation is on a cultural practice that is common on both cool and warm season turf grass greens, and in some cases on fairways, known as top dressing. Top dressing describes the action of applying a thin layer of material over a turf surface. The top dressing material is usually sand, soil, or compost, or a combination of these materials. There are several reasons why top dressing is an important part of any turf grass management program. First, top dressing helps maintain a consistent, firm, smooth playing surface. When top dressing is applied and dragged or brushed across the turf, it fills in undulations, depressions, or holes, which contributes to the turf's firmness and smoothness. The second role that top dressing plays is to reduce the bulk density of native or push-up greens or fairways. This photograph shows a soil profile that has been deep tined and then had sand added to it. The scraggly channel through the center of this profile was created by the deep tine operation, followed by a heavy sand application that is filled in the channel for the purpose of helping reduce compaction and open drainage channels through the soil. This chart shows that sand increases the amount of air spaces in the soil and also reduces the tendency for that soil to become compacted. Frequent top dressing is often used to build a new root zone on top of a heavy or native soil turf. This is the case as a sand layer is being built up above this native soil on this green through frequent top dressing. In this picture, sand top dressing a fairway over a series of years has resulted in an approximately 4 to 5 inch sand layer above the soil. Why do some golf courses top dress fairways, especially since it would be very expensive? It has to do with firmness and stability. Sand top dress fairways allow for play that under natural soil conditions could not occur. As a sand layer becomes moisture saturated from maybe a heavy thunderstorm or rain events, it still retains strength or structure. This would allow for play in golf cart usage that would not be possible on a soil high in clay or silt. A third reason top dressing is applied to turf is to dilute thatch. Thatch is a layer of organic material that builds up between the grass plant and the soil. It is made up of plant residues like old crowns, roots, stolons, and rhizomes. Grass clippings do not contribute to the thatch, since they break down quickly. Some thatch is actually a good thing on putting greens in that it provides a little cushion to receive a golf shot, but once it becomes relatively thick or spongy, it can hold water and cause problems associated with shallow rooting. Thatch is naturally broken down or decomposed by earthworms and other organisms in the soil. But if the rate of thatch buildup is quicker than the rate of decomposition, becomes excessive, then it's a problem. On putting greens constructed with sand root zones, thatch is often controlled by turf managers through coring and top dressing. As previously mentioned, top dressing helps to control thatch by diluting it, which means that top dressing mixes with the thatch. Organisms in the soil can now decompose the thatch, but most importantly, the thatch is diluted so that it is not a discrete spongy layer at the top of the soil. A fourth reason top dressing is applied to turf is in conjunction with renovation. The combination of coring, seeding, and top dressing provides much greater benefits than any one of those practices performed alone. The top dressing material covers the seed, helping it to retain moisture and preventing seed movement. So in summary, top dressing helps to smooth and firm the playing surface, reduce bulk density, dilute thatch and organic matter that accumulates, and helps in turf establishment. There are numerous top dressing materials. A golden rule of top dressing is to match the material with the underlying soil. This is particularly important on sand root zones. On native soil root zones, there's a lot more latitude in what type of top dressing material you can use. Materials can include a good quality sandy topsoil, pure sand, a combination of sand and compost, a combination of sand and calcined clay, or any combinations of these materials. If one of the goals of top dressing is improved drainage, then sand is typically the governing material, since adding it will improve infiltration rates over time. On sand root zones, top dressing materials are generally 100% sand. Not all sands are the same. There are specific criteria for sands used. Particle size distribution, uniformity, shape, and chemical makeup are all important factors. Local sand suppliers should be able to offer information on their sand products that includes details on each of these criteria. Sands are classified by the size of their particles. As shown here, fine gravel contains granular particles greater than 2 millimeters in diameter, while fine sands have much smaller diameters of 1/10 to 0.25 millimeters. As a general rule of thumb, medium coarse, uniform sands are used on native soils with slightly smaller particles introduced on sand root zones. Finer particles of sand are used on sand root zones to ensure surface stability. Basically, the coarser the sand, the less stable or firm it is. A common top dressing sand would adhere to the United States Golf Association or USGA sand specifications, highlighted here in yellow. With 60% of the sand particles in the medium coarse size range, this sand is considered a uniform medium coarse sand. Finding a good local sand supplier is the key to a good top dressing program. It's also important to get to know the materials and what they look like. Looking at these four materials, which do you think is a uniform coarse medium sand? The one in the upper left-hand corner is predominantly silt and clay. The one in the upper right-hand corner contains too much gravel. The bottom left sample is actually gravel. The sand in the bottom right is a uniform medium coarse sand. Once you are familiar with the uniform medium coarse sand's look and feel, it makes quality control of top dressing products much easier. There are several ways to apply top dressing materials. The oldest method is applied by hand. The material should be dry so that it can be applied swiftly and uniformly. For larger areas like greens, dry sand can be applied with a rotary spreader and is often lightly dragged in. There are several larger top dressing machines available. Larger machines obviously hold more material in the hopper and so need to be restocked less frequently. If a heavy application of sand is desired, top dressing is done in conjunction with some kind of soil cultivation like coring. Poking a hole in the soil that is filled with granular material like sand improves surface drainage capabilities. Some golf course superintendents like to apply top dressing first and then run the cultivator over the top to disperse the top dressing material down into the holes. Lastly, we'll look at the rates and frequency of top dressing. Generally, the amount of top dressing material, and in this case I'm basing this on a 100% sand top dressing program for putting greens, is a goal of 25 to 50 cubic feet per 1,000 square feet per year. When you think about it, this is a considerable amount of sand needed to help manage organic matter or thatch accumulation. Some of the downsides to applying this much sand is, besides the material costs, are labor costs and the wear and tear that can occur to a mowing unit if this practice of top dressing and coring is not done correctly. To apply this amount of material, we would most likely aggressively core and fill the cores with sand in the spring and fall. In between the two coring and sand top dressing operations, we would apply a light, frequent application of sand through the season, normally to a 3 millimeter depth every 7 to 10 days. You want to top dress frequently enough to get a uniform root zone profile, versus this situation where layering has occurred. The layers are the dark lines in the sand profile, developing because the time between applications is too long. These layers can be detrimental during summer stress periods because they restrict or impact root growth. This concludes this presentation on top dressing.